Morning folks, a little bit different today. We've changed the workshop around a tiny little bit, basically because we're going to do some turning today. We're going to focus on some parts of the cabinet. So we thought, well, change things around a bit, so you'll probably see little bits and pieces in there that you don't normally see on a day-to-day basis or a show-to-show basis. So yeah, just bear with it. We're still working on this little idea that we've come up with. Something different, something new to start with. So anyhow, we'll give it a shot. So a couple of questions came up during the show, during last week, or actually during the show last week, when I was fitting the drawer fronts to the cabinet. Now here's our lovely little cabinet, and I've got all these lovely drawer fronts fitted, which are a snug fit. Now people were saying, oh, I thought the drawer fronts were going to fit over the top of the framework. I haven't yet seen an apothecary chest where the drawers actually fit over the framework. They tend to fit into the framework because that's the nature of the way these cabinets are made. All they were in past times were a bunch of drawers in a framework for purposes like putting, well, you see them in libraries where they've got all the cards and things in, so they were never very deep, these ones, and then they started sort of developing longer and deeper and wider ones for workshops where you had nuts and bolts or tools, or you had them in places where you had lots of little things that you had to store close at hand. And so all they did was expand them and lengthen them and make them a whole lot bigger. But they didn't do anything about the design on it in the past, and all the drawers actually fit in a framework. And the reason was that they're easier to make that frame and then bung a drawer in it. It doesn't have to be perfect because it's a storage cabinet basically. All I've done with this one here is decided to fancy it up a little bit by making it out of fairly classy timber and basically sticking to traditional design pattern but making it a bit bigger. So basically that's what I'm doing. Now the other question that came up was, why have I got these drawer fronts fitting snugly when the problem that's going to occur is that's going to expand once it's attached to the drawer. That's going to expand and jam in the space. Now to answer that, the reason I have them fitting snug so that when I fit the drawer to it, the drawer's going to fit in the right place. And then I'm going to trim around the edges, probably not the bottom, but trim around the two sides and the top of it to give it that space so that it can expand and contract. It's not going to stay that way. This is just for ease of fitting things into it and making sure that everything fits perfect. I want my gaps to be exactly the same as the cabinet, as the cavity that they're sitting in. And to do that, make each drawer pane, even if you have them, because we've done this all by hand, even if we have a tiny variation in the measurement, once we put the cabinet in there and the face in there and take a little piece off it, it's going to look like it fits in there and they're all going to look the same. So instead of cutting them all exactly the same size and then expecting them all to fit the cavities, that's what I've done with it. So fit them perfectly, fit them to the drawer, then make sure that they've got a bit of space around them afterwards so that they fit in nice and neatly. And you can adjust that depending on how much of a space you want. You may want a bit more of a space at the top of it so you can lift it up and down, a bit more play. It's going to expand across the timber more so than along the timber. So the gap on the sides is going to be probably a little bit less than what's going to happen at the top of each of the spaces. So that's the reasoning behind why I've got them fitting perfect at the moment, or fairly snug at the moment. You can see it's a little tight, but that's okay. It's not going to stay that way. Believe me, it's going to be fitted better. The other point was, somebody mentioned, why don't you just make a strip like that and just dot the bits off? There was a good reason for that. I explained that right in the first part. When we look at I've got a pencil here and I'm just going to draw on the front of my cabinet. The grain structure on the cabinet is such that it's very fine in bits and pieces. And I was explaining this to Pam the other day, that the grain line, you can see that grain line running across there, actually to get it to match up to the bit that's on this side, it has to cross over there, right? And so that grain pattern has to be a continuation into these bits here, and that occurs all the way along here, right? So that sort of knotty bit there has to go through, and this bit here continues across to there. These, of course, is there. This one here, you can see they match up and they fit together, and all of that grain pattern has to continue all the way across there. Visually, that's what you'll see. Now, if there's a break in it, you're going to see that break in it. If I just cut that and have this much movement, or that much of a cut, which is about the width of your saw blade, when you move that apart, this bit here is over here. It doesn't actually fit into where it should be. And that's why I've cut those pieces out of there, so that we get that continuous flow of all the grain patterns that on the piece, so that when you look at it, it's a whole piece of timber rather than just something where we've docked bits and pieces off. And where you've got a wider space or a wider part of grain, you're going to get variation, or a much wider spread of variation, because of the distance between the two pieces of timber. So that's why I've done it that way. And okay, it was a waste of a little bit of timber, but the overall effect on the cabinet is once I've put the finish on it, it's going to actually look quite stunning. So I hope that explains a couple of the things that have happened in here. It should look quite nice. So anyway, that's my reasoning. Now, for today. So what we're going to do today is draw handles or draw knobs. Now, we can go down to our local hardware store and we can purchase these cute little knobs. Now, they come in all sorts. You can get them in brass, you can get them in silver or black or whatever the case may be. But when you put them on a piece of timber, it doesn't look so bad. But the whole point of my building this cabinet the way I'm building it is to have everything handmade in it, even though we're making it on machinery, is to have it handmade. And what I don't want is influence of metals on such beautiful timber. And these, of course, little aluminium things, and you can get them in all different shapes and sizes. They're just some of the ones that I've sort of picked up over the past few years where I've been experimenting with different things. If you haven't got a lathe, or you aren't able to turn little knobs or buttons or anything like that, then these are a good alternative. You can purchase some quite pretty ones. If you have a look around at some of the hardware stores, you have a look at somewhere where you buy hinges and bits and pieces, you'll often find these sorts of things sort of just chucked in a box somewhere, and if you can get something that matches or something that's a bit antique-y to fit the purpose, by all means, use them. I prefer not to with this project. I'd probably use them on something else, but on this one, maybe not. So, making these ones. what I've done is I've made a prototype of the drawer handle. Now remember, I said to you last week, listen to your customer and ask them what they want with the drawer handles. Now these are the ones that Pammy likes the shape of, and you may have seen them in a past project that we've done, but they're just a simple little design. So I drew up a little plan of it. This is my little plan, and it's just the shape of the knob. Now what we can do is I can round that over a little bit, so on the top, or I can round over these bits and pieces here. So it's quite simple. I've drawn up, and this is the one for the large knob, so that's that size there. And I've got a plug so that I can drill a hole and put it into the piece of timber. You can see on the back of the piece of timber there's a hole in there where I've just drilled a hole through. So you need to work with one of your drill bits to work out what size this little plug's going to be. And again, work with your customer, find out what they want. Might be your wife, might be your sister, might be your daughter, or whoever, or might even be your son who wants a thing. So have a think about it, and sort of do things like that to the project. You may just want to do it because you like it, and that's where it goes. So all it is a little, and that's what I've made. So they're just a little plug like that. Now they're not that easy to make. Now I've been turning for something like 40 odd years, and doing quite a lot of, I did a bit of commercial wood turning in my early days, and even trying to turn something like that over and over again and getting it exactly the same is not an easy task. But I'm going to show you how I go about it. Now, if you Google wood turning, you'll get 100 shows on YouTube with people wood turning. Everybody has their own way of doing things. This is my way of doing things. So if you like the way I do things, well then okay, I don't mind if you copy it. But I often hear people say, don't do it that way, that's the wrong way. Don't do it that way, this is the best way. I find that way is too hard, I like to do it this way. Everybody has an opinion, right? This is the way I do my little knobs, and it works for me, and I'm happy with that, and my customer's going to be happy too. I at least hope she is anyway. So, the first thing I do is find a piece of timber that you use for, you want to use for your knobs. Now I've got a number of pieces of timber. I've already started turning some of them, and what I have here, that's another piece of that. I was just doing some practice with my chisels, and I was turning the knob, and there's one that I've turned that's on the end still. I haven't cut it off. Okay, so it's just a matter of going through the process of building that. So if you're not familiar with it, that's what it looks like when you start it, and I'll just cut that off, and we'll use it to plug. Now, one of the problems that I've found, and I'm turning away merrily, and I've got this lovely little piece here that I've started with, and the colour's nice, the shape is just starting to get there, and when I turned it over, I've got this big crack all the way down here, right? And I thought, oh, that's okay, I'll glue that together. And I turned it over a little bit further, and there's another one, and they didn't show up. It was a piece of timber that looked like this until such time as I turned it, and then all of this cracking showed up, right? Now, if you don't have lots of bits of the timber you want, you can fix that. And I'll show you how to do that. I'm not going to use this piece of timber for it because I want my, if in the past my the handles start to deteriorate, the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to fall apart where it's been damaged. But for a short-term fix, it's a good idea. So a little bit of super glue. Now I use this super glue because it's thin and it runs in the crack, and wherever the two pieces of timber meet, it will stick together. It might still have a gap in it, but we put a bit of glue in there. Now that will soak in. And the beauty about this stuff is, because it dries relatively quickly, I'll just sit that there for a second. It's not going to sit up for me. And I'll get my speed dryer. And I'll give that a bit of a squirt. Point it at it. Okay, so that's now dry enough to actually turn. So I can go ahead and use that now and turn it, because all the super glue is actually dry, and just using that hardener, it does the trick beautifully. But I'm not going to use that piece, basically because that I don't want, like I said, I don't want it to deteriorate in say 50 years time. It falls apart because because the crack has deteriorated, or the glue that I'm using has deteriorated in such a way that it's going to cause some problems. I want the thing to last a long time, so I probably wouldn't use that. I may use that for something else. It could come in handy. I could probably turn it down smaller and make a pen out of it. You know, there's something I can do with it. So it'll get relegated to the not today box, and we'll go from there. Now, to turn these, the way I go about it is I'll turn myself a spindle or a cylinder. Now, over on the bench here, I have a range of tools, and I always advise people, set yourself up so that you don't have to go searching for bits and pieces and tools and things like that you need. Make sure your tools are sharp, and make sure that they're all in working order before you actually start. So what I have here is a range of different skews, because I'm going to turn the spindle out with a skew. Okay, so I'm going to use, I've got a few there, and I'll just show you some of the things that happen with those skews. Next to that, I've got a number of different types of parting tools. Now, 2 of those are homemade, so there are reasons for using that. This one here is made from a high-speed hacksaw blade, and this one here is the bottom part of an ice skate. So people go, ice skate? Yeah, they're high-speed steel and they have sharp edges, so they're quite good for turning. And then I have my little 3/8 spindle gouge just there as well. Next to that, I have a range of different measuring tools, and you need those for this process. I've got a couple of different verniers, and just little calipers, and of course a ruler, and of course you're going to need a pencil. But like I say, make sure everything works, make sure everything is in order, and make sure everything is sharp, so that you're not having to sort of fiddle around, stop and start to get things started. I often see on YouTube guys who start turning, and then all of a sudden things don't work properly, and they have to go straight to the grinder and sharpen a tool. It takes away from the experience that people see when they're turning. So I hope I haven't jinxed myself. Okay, my first task when turning these is to find the centre. Now this is extremely soft material, so I don't really need to punch a hole in it. I don't want to do that anyway, because it puts pressure on and splits the piece of timber apart if I put too much pressure on it. So I'm just going to leave it like that. Sit my piece of material in the lathe. And you may need to have a look at different jaws a little bit further. So I just wind that in. You can see it's still loose. Into the centre, push it up, just make sure everything's locked in. Now I haven't pushed it in too tight, just enough to hold it. And I'm just going to lock that in place now. So basically I'm ready to turn that into a cylinder. Now the tool rest is a bit short, so let's go to a longer one. Now as you can see, that is actually too long. What I can do is loosen that off. I can push this out, push my tool rest backwards until I've got a fit in there. Don't want to be too close to my material. Lock everything up. Test it, making sure it's running. Now if you have a vary speed and you're not used to it, just make sure you've got speed turned down. Once down fairly slow. If it's new to you and you haven't used a vary speed, make sure your speed is down. I once saw a demonstration where a wood turner was working with, an experienced wood turner mind you, was working with a piece of rough mallee root, I think it was, and it had knots and bits and pieces in it, and not being used to the lathe, turned it on. It was at maximum speed, and this thing was out of centre and just spat pieces of timber all over the workshop. Now that could be dangerous, so the idea is to think safe and get it down to different speed. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit with each of the chisels, and I'm just going to show you the shape of the chisel that I have, and you can see the result, so you can make up your mind what you want to do. I might start with that one. I'm going to start. This is a standard skew chisel that you would purchase from a place where you would buy your wood turning tools. This is a Sorby's. It's not very big, fairly thin, but that's the standard shape, and you can see it's got a very straight tooth on it. Alright, so perfectly flat. Now that's not common amongst a lot of the experienced wood turners. They tend to do something different, and I'll show you that in a second. So if you're just beginning, this is actually a good tool to start with, and you can see when they're sharp, they actually cut quite nicely, but you have to be very careful to make sure that you're working on the back end of the chisel rather than the tip end, unless of course you're using the tip end to create a nice sharp edge. So laying the chisel bevel on the piece of timber, and I've got the tool rest just a little bit, just a tiny bit above centre, so I'm working on the top edge of the piece of timber. You can see I'm getting some really nice shavings. You can see the shavings are actually nice and curly and coming off beautifully. So that's one chisel, and as you can see, when you look at it, it's very, very smooth. It's nice clean surface, and it comes up quite nicely. Now if we go to another chisel that is, now this one here again is a straight blade. The difference between this chisel and the first one that I had is that we have a curve on here, so it allows easier to rock it back and forth on the tool rest and hold it in position. So it works quite well. A little bit wider, and we can get a different cut. speed up a little. And my speed is, it's about 1800. And you see, we have quite a nice carpet. And again, a nice clean surface. So, a different chisel again. Okay, so we'll stay on the smaller chisels. And this one, you can see I've got a little bit more of a curve. Now these are a little bit easier to use than the flat ones, basically because there's not much that can catch on it. And you can see I've got a lovely surface, nice clean surface with that chisel. We'll go back to another one now. This is less of a curve. Okay, now this is one that I like a lot. It's got a nice little short handle on it. It's a P&N, and they don't make P&N anymore, I believe. But it's nice and chunky, and you see that it's got less of a curve on the blade. And that is quite nice. And when I'm doing that, the blade itself is actually touching me on the side, so I've got it up against my body. So I can rock myself forward, and I can cut that, or if we want to go back the other way. Like that. Now, if you don't like standing close to the work, here's another one that's a very similar blade, and again, it's up against my side. And that will give me a nice little cylinder. So the cylinder there is it's important. So I'm going to go back to the other one. Now, to make this, what I want to do is I've got to make a few of them, right? So I've got a nice long piece of timber, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn one and cut it off, and I'll just keep moving along all the way along, but I need to measure as I go. So my first task is to get the diameter of the end of the knob. So what I want to do is I want to get the diameter of that part of the knob. So the three diameters that I have to do is I've got this one here, I've got that one there. This one doesn't really matter as long as it's less than that, but this one has to matter as well. So it's important that we do get that one about right, basically because it's got to fit a drill bit, so that when we drill a hole, that will fit in snugly into the hole. So that's important, that one's important, and that one's important, and that will give you an overall effect. This one here, you can judge that by eye anyway. If you want to measure it, by all means do. This is what they look like when you do three of them in a row. So when you try to do three of them in a row, that's what you're going to end up with. Whoop. I don't know if that's going to work, but anyway. We try and get them all to fit like that. So they all look the same. They're the large knobs, right? So the large ones are already made. The smaller ones are going to be a little bit smaller, and then the smaller ones again are going to be a millimetre or two smaller than that. You don't want them so small that you can't grab hold of them, but you do want them to match into, if you can see here, we've got three different size drawers, and they still have to match into that. Incidentally, this is the difference between 1 and 2. So this is the size that I have to make. That one there, I've already got those 3. I have to make that little one. So by taking those, just got to make sure I've got the right one. That's not right. We set our calipers. Now I want to set the calipers, and that's at 9.5mm. So that caliper is going to go to that one. Lock that in place. Second set of calipers is to go to the outside of that. So it's a good idea to have a number of pair of calipers. Or if you're really good by doing it by eye, that's that's always a good thing. And my third set of calipers, and that's just one of those squeeze one, has got to be the same size as that. And as you can see, that's probably a better caliper for doing that measurement there than this one here, which you can't actually fit in there. So that's quite a good one for there. I'm not too concerned about the outside of that. All I want to do is make sure that that little step there is actually smaller than the outside diameter of that. Okay, the length of the piece. I'm not too concerned about the length of the plug. That's not an issue. What I need is the length, which is 18mm. That one looks like it's 19mm, but that's only because you've got a rounded top on it. So 18mm is my length. So first thing, turn the whole cylinder down to that diameter. So all of that cylinder needs to be at least that diameter, or a tiny little bit bigger. It gives you a bit of sample room. So skew, I have my skew. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to turn a little step, and I'll keep checking it. Not quite right yet. I'm going to use a parting tool to do that. I don't want to waste too much of it. That's a little bit too big, too small. Let's test that. Actually, that little step is pretty much the size I want it. It's not looking too bad actually. I'll take a little bit more off. Just do that much of it rather than do all of it. just not quite there, but that's perfect for what I want to do with it. Okay, spindle gouge. Now the end of it, I don't want the end of it because it's got a little hole in the bottom of it there. I don't want a hole in the end of the knob, so starting up here a little bit, I'm just going to step in there. Whoop, catch. Catch it. I didn't damage it, so it's good. Okay. Right. Measurement. Got to have a measurement. 18 mil. There to there. And we've got a 3 mil step. This is going through the plug. Screw it down a tiny bit. It's my little plug. There is just to check the diameter of that. I just want it a little bit bigger than I need it because I'm going to sand it down. It's perfect. Now I need to use my calipers and turn this down to the right diameter here. Now, you're probably saying, gee, that's going to take forever to make one of those. Unfortunately, it does. Now, this is my high-speed steel hardening tool. That gives me a start. I've also got sharp edges on the top of that little step. Check my diameter. A bit more. Perfect. I just want to sharpen that shoulder up in there. Take off. There. And now to get the plug the right size. It's got to come down just a tiny little bit. So out with my parting tool. Now I've got a different parting tool for this. The chisels on the floor and blade. And on the snaps. got it. Okay, so that's basically it. What I want to do now is I've got to go and rescue that chisel. I've nearly landed on Tam's foot. No, I didn't damage it too much. Okay. Get rid of this stuff here now. And round that over a bit. Okay. Let's just pull that off. Okay, now, I haven't taken it all the way down. I could turn it all the way off, not a problem, but I want to cut it off with a blade. The reason I'm going to do that is because I want a flat surface there. So I've got one of my little Japanese tools, this one of my little Japanese pull saw. I'm going to take that piece off there, because that's got the hole, and you can see the hole in the bottom of there. And now you can see I've got a flat surface right on the top of the knob. Okay. Now that's going to get sanded with a little bit of 320. Just pull the rest away. A little rounded top on the edge of that step, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be on the bottom, but it does. It's just a little bit on the top. And then this is the one I'm copying, and you can see I'm a little fatter in that step, but basically the shape of it's exactly the same. So it looks pretty good. And sitting apart, you're not going to notice any differences. Okay, now the pull saw comes in handy again here, and I do this for a reason. I could turn it off, not a problem, but I want to cut it off with this so that I've got a flat surface on the next bit, which I'm going to put the tailstock into. Very difficult to photograph this one, Penny. It's just
done.
And the reason I've taken that off there like that is because I want this centre to be a flat surface, and if I turned it, there's a chance it's going to have a little knob on it, and that little knob, a little nib like that, it's very difficult to get the point of the tailstock into that little nib. So it's gives me a flat surface, and then it's just a matter of there's the little knob. Now, secret, the thing about it is, that one, when you set them together like that, they look pretty much the same, right? The variations and the differences in them are acceptable because it's handmade. It's not factory made, or it's not made on a copy lathe. It's made by hand, and that's the beauty of it. Now I've got another one here that I made, and when you put the three of them together, you can see that they're all pretty much the same. So it's a matter of a little bit of practice, This one here looks a little bit fatter on the top, but hey, it's a handmade piece of furniture, and you want a bit of character in it. This one here, all I need to do is cut the top off that. Now, the second bit, got 15 minutes. Let's see if I can knock one up fairly quickly without a lot of chat. So I'm going to downsize my tool rest. Now remember, we already had that turned to the right diameter, so we don't have to fiddle around with diameters. What I do need to do is make sure I get my measurements correct. It's 18mm. $3 in here. Now go through the same process when you do this. So the first thing I did, actually, is I haven't left a little bit for, and Tammy's just brought that up. I've got that little hole in there, and I need to leave a little bit of movement, a little bit of room for that. So let's change our measurements. So the easiest way to get rid of your measurement is sandpaper. Rule her out again. Let's take the first 5mm off. I'll get rid of all of that, and then we'll go 18mm. Try that.
That's better.
Parting tool. Let me show you what, this is the ice skate blade. An ice skate blade is hollow down the middle. Right? I've just helped it a little bit by filing a little bit out, and I've filed a bit off the back of it. So it actually gives you a really good cutting tool. Where it's cut, it's extremely sharp and it's extremely close and clean cut. Now it's no good for what I want to do the next step, but it does give you another opportunity to do stuff. Swapping and changing back and forth. The different tools, you can see I'm moving back and forth, making sure that I've got pretty good. Spindle gouge. The Vic Mark lathe that I'm using at the moment is the 300 VL valve speed, and I've got a knee bar on it, so you can see it stop and start still. They're very popular lathe for Gitmart. You can see them all over the world. I believe they're made up around Queensland somewhere. As you can see, it doesn't take very long. Grab one of the ones that I made earlier. And this is looking pretty much the same. Take a bit more off the top. Check that diameter. Now there are a number of blokes or a number of people who are good at wood turning who don't even stop the lathe when you're checking measurements. Yeah, that's fine. But I do like to make sure I've got mine right. And I like to do it safely, and we're working with something really, really small, so if I get a catch, it's ruined a piece in a good half hour of effort. It goes down the drain. Pretty much got that there. Saw out. Sandpaper. Okay, so I've got a little tear out there, so I'm going to grab a quarter grit paper. A piece of 180 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I was going to say this whole box of sandpaper behind me.
And right there, I my Mondays get little caddies. Probably should. And normally when I finish sanding, I generally put a finish on, but I'm not going to do that with these until after I've got them fitted. And then I look at this. I've got two pretty much exactly the same.
Nice.
Okay, so they're pretty good. Now to cut that off, like I said, I like to cut that off with a pull saw. And gives me a flat surface in here so that I can put my tailstock up there to do the rest. So that's where we're going to stop today, is where we've got now 1, 2, 3, there's one here, 1, 2, 3, 4, about the same size. And I've got 3 for the top. You can see they are a little different, they're a little bit bigger. And the next ones, all I have to do now is make the ones for the small ones. Now, you will find that you're going to make errors. That's why I've got lots of bits of timber. So, having plenty of pieces of timber will actually give you a little bit more confidence that you're going to get them right eventually. Even if you do spend a fair bit of time making them, it's always a good idea to have extra timber or extra stuff so that you've got got something to play with. So now what I have to do now is to drill the holes in the centre of all of these and fit them, and I'll be fitting them exactly like this. So all I've done is drill the hole. You can see that the piece, and it's just a matter of putting that into and gluing that into place, and then that will get fitted to the drawer. So that's just a matter of fiddling around with it. So next week, what I want to do next week is I want to pull the drawers out, and I want to fit a couple of drawers. During the week I'll fit the bottom ones and have them already in the drawers, but I'll show you how to fit a couple of the other ones and how I'll go about it to get them so that they fit exactly right. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. It's all about turning today. We didn't do any dovetailing or anything like that, so if you're new to the show, we will eventually get back to using dovetails and using the jig. So please, if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe, and we'll get lots more of this sort of stuff going. So like I said, make your pieces personal by doing things rather than going buying bits and pieces. So have a good week, everybody, and I will see you all next week. I just hope I got the right button.